You're listening to AM 1280 The Patriot. I'm Eric Purius with Bell Mortgage. This is RealTalkTwinCities.com. We're here for all things real estate every Sunday at 6 o'clock. You can reach me for a mortgage checkup or any questions whatsoever at 952-905-5757, or Cheryl, my compatriot, pun intended, get it? Picture.
Oh, you're
Got it.
so
I guess-
quick, Eric. I can't
Keep the old
believe
day
it.
job, huh?
Yes.
You can reach Cheryl at 612-735-0553. We are continuing our conversation with Elise Jensen. She's a certified financial planner with Azure Wealth Management. We just got into some of the emotional traps associated with buying and selling real estate, and also with financial planning. So we've got more with Elise right now. And what are some of the other traps that you've seen that, or emotional aspects of either financial planning individually or combined with real estate, Elise?
Well, first of all, when we before the break, we talked about delayed planning, and almost every emotional trap as it relates to purchasing a home can be prevented if you simply call me and ask, what should I be looking for? Because it's my job to offer advice that's in your best interest to make sure that you're doing with your money what is ultimately going to help you achieve your goals, your financial goals. I joke that I'm a little bit of a shrink for your money. Not a licensed therapist, but sometimes I feel like I am. But one of the biggest emotional traps is that people get so focused on purchasing their home that they, again, ignore their retirement goals, their education funding goals, just even their emergency fund goals that they have. And like I said, they get out on the other side of purchasing the house and they don't have appropriate life insurance. They haven't even considered what happens if they pass away and leave this mortgage to their spouse. Another one is, do you guys know what one of the leading reasons for home foreclosures is?
Not making the payment.
Well, and the reason why you're not making the
Money
payment.
problems.
Exactly.
Stellar, Eric.
One of the leading causes for home foreclosures is a disabling event of the primary breadwinner.
Sure.
Health. Yep, and those things can be very, very easily avoided if you call a certified financial planner like myself and understand what it takes to really be prepared for home ownership.
And they can also find you on your website, azurewealthmanagement.com, right, Elise?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct. Another one of my personal favorites, I shouldn't say favorites because they're often a headache to deal with, are what I like to call the furniture financiers.
Oh my gosh.
Again, you guys are all taking a look at their monthly cash flow, their debt to income, making sure that it's appropriate. And again, on the other side of that home purchase, I oftentimes see clients calling me and saying, well, now we can't afford to furnish the house. And so what do? They say, well, I can get 0% down at one of these local furniture shops. They go out and they buy way too much furniture. All of a sudden an emergency comes up. They don't have an appropriate emergency fund set aside anymore because they spent it on the down payment for their house. And all of a sudden they can't meet that 0% financing requirement, that time limit, and they're stuck paying 20, 30% to finance some sofas.
So in this case, at least to some degree, would you say that the emotional trap is the draw and the dream of home ownership, and that can cause you to gloss over some seemingly commonsensical, prudent steps because of the emotion and the excitement of that home ownership? Is that?
Oh, absolutely. Zip code envy is also another one. I oftentimes see clients that just have to live in a certain area of town regardless of whether or not they actually, again, can afford it. And affording your mortgage is a lot different than affording your mortgage and your overall financial plan and making sure you're on track for retirement and your other goals.
So part of that would also be down payment, perhaps. I mean,
Yeah.
I run into folks, and this is an emotional trap, I think, of mortgage, that, mortgage insurance, well, we have to put 20% down. And, so that's really an emotional thing, that at all costs, we should never have it. And yeah, I mean, nobody likes it, but it's there for a reason, and we can, as we've talked about in the past, get the seller to pay for it. We can do a lender credit to pay for it. There are programs with no MI. And so some of those things, in fact, if I worked in conjunction with a certified financial planner, perhaps between the loan officer and a planner, you could really work something out quite nice for the clients.
Absolutely. Believe it or not, but I do have access to technology that allows me to crunch those numbers on your behalf. And it's very, very simple to say, how much should we put down based on the other goals we have? And then I can actually let my clients weigh the pros and cons of, well, we can put 20% down, but maybe we're not gonna be able to send little Jimmy to college, and pay for it in year one. Maybe he has to take some student loans. We can weigh those pros and cons. I actually have a really funny down payment story as well that's brief. Believe it or not, I had a client call me when Facebook was going public that said, Elise, we just need to, buy a few $100s worth of Facebook stock because we need the down payment, for a home next year.
Oh my gosh.
And I looked, I was on the phone, I said,
Wow.
Really? So you think a few $100s is going to equate to a down payment on a reasonably sized home within a year?
Not happening.
I advise them not to do that.
Hopefully they took your advice.
Hindsight's 20/20, but
Yeah.
Well, and some of the other things that we've been talking about too when it comes to smart planning is the difference between renting and owning and the advantages and the equity that you're building and the financial situation that you're in 5 or 6 years down the road. And Eric, when you're qualifying people, you are looking at a certain percentage of debt to income when you determine the price point. What's that percentage you're looking at?
45 is the max. In other words, you take 45% of your gross income, and that, let's say it's, $1,000 for simplicity's sake. You can spend up to $450 on a mortgage or whatever your bills are. And so in your monthly debt, car payments, student loan payments, minimum payment on credit cards, and a new mortgage or existing has to fit within 45% of your gross monthly income.
Okay, and so what do you think is realistic from what you've seen? Is the mortgage, principal, interest, taxes, is that closer to like 35% of their gross?
Well, you will find, I see Elise shaking her head there, and I've heard, the Susie Ormans of the world, saying, you want your mortgage to be in the low 30s. And even Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, some old, sort of more suggestions than a true guideline. Because the guideline's 45%. We routinely go to, the low to mid 40s is pretty common. And I don't find that to be putting people in a bad position. We don't see higher delinquency rates when we go that high. So, however, I think the conventional wisdom is that although what you're talking, when you say, as a financial planner, when you say 32%, you're just talking about the mortgage payment, right?
yeah.
Okay. So what I'm talking about is the debt to income rate, the total.
Yeah.
With
So in
all
other
of their
words, with
bills.
everything else combined. So probably we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then there are also the tax advantages of homeownership as well, which
Right.
actually brings that percentage down from
Right.
33%.
Having a write-off versus no write-off.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the wealth building aspect of paying down the principal. And hopefully some appreciation.
So Elise, do you have a certain percentage requirement that you would recommend that a homeowner might pay for their different insurances?
It really depends on where people are at life, and it's based on everyone's individual budget. And again, we come back to making sure you're working with a holistic planner, not someone that's just pushing a product on you. A holistic planner like myself should be able to sit down with you, help you walk through a budget and understand what percentage of my income do I even have to work with. I mean, in an ideal world, everyone would be appropriately insured and saving for retirement early in life when it's very inexpensive, they're still healthy. Age and health are the two factors when it comes to insurance. And, we've got compound interest working against you if you delay saving for retirement. So if I come across a client that's 50, has no insurance in place, and is not on track for retirement, it's gonna be a lot higher percentage than somebody that's in their 20s and just getting started. So it really depends, and it takes sitting down and working with a client. But generally 15 to 20% of your income should be going to future goals, and that isn't necessarily retirement. It could be vacations or homeownership, etc.
Right.
Gotcha. What are some of the, do you have any, I don't know, I hesitate to say horror stories, but what's like one of the classic, emotional trap that people walk in your office and you start to hear and you're like, oh, here we go.
There are so many of them, but I'll give you one that actually, to most people, probably wouldn't seem like a negative emotional trap, that can oftentimes be not in the client's best interest. So I have people that come to me that say, or clients that come to me and say, you know, I've just refinanced my mortgage to a 15-year, rates are so low, you know, and great, in theory, that's wonderful, right? But again, a lot of times the people that are really, really debt adverse, you know, haven't taken a look at the whole picture. They're so focused on paying off their debt and being debt free that they, again, haven't considered what those extra dollars are spending on that mortgage, even if it is lower interest, what those extra dollars could have accomplished if deferred into a retirement account that would have, you know, maybe had a lifespan of 30 to 40 years versus 15.
Great advice.
That's a good point. I run into that as well. We can flesh that out a little bit more when we come back. We're also going to get to our Ask the Expert question, which has to do with how long derogatories stay on your credit report. You might be surprised by the answer. I know I was. Also, there's some upcoming changes that might impact you and your credit report. We'll be right back on RealTalkTwinCities.com. AM 1280, The Patriot.